Hi, I'm Dawn Kenton and I specialise in helping sales teams, their managers and trainers improve results by getting even better at what they do. Today I'm going to share with you some thoughts around what makes a great trainer. For many of you, during lockdown you've had to be involved in perhaps delivering sessions online to a greater degree than you perhaps normally would have done. It might be completely new for some of you. For others, it's well within your comfort zone. You might be an experienced trainer and you just want to sense check what it is that makes you great against the feedback that I have to share with you today. So whatever it is, hopefully you'll find this useful as a benchmark to think about how you perform in each of these 8 key areas and where are the areas that you might need to focus on to become even more amazing. So that's what we're going to do. I've collated this session from the sessions that I deliver, the trainer sessions that I deliver, and I've had the privilege of training hundreds of trainers, and as part of that process, one of the exercises that we do is to talk about our own experiences and what we believe makes a really great trainer. And regardless of the level of experience of the group, the size of the group, the group mix, what comes out consistently in some way, shape or form are these 8 key themes. So in this video, I'm going to go through those 8 themes with you, break them down in a little bit more detail and talk about what that really means to your learners and how you can use that information to make your sessions even more engaging, even more effective, and feel really confident that you're doing a fantastic job. Area number 1. So this comes out very early and it comes out loud and clear. So great trainers are expert at the thing that they are training. So what that means is that they know something, they've seen something, they've done something, or they've tried something that is of value to the people that they are delivering the training to. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be the most expert person at that particular subject on the planet, or arguably even in your organisation, but it's that your level of expertise is of value to the people that you're training. So sometimes people have got a real deep understanding and a real high level of expertise, but they struggle to articulate that to other people. So if you've got a particular expertise that you've been asked to share with other people and it's not in your experience to do that, and even if it is in your experience to do that, you need to make sure that you practice how you're going to get that expertise across, how you're going to get those messages across. And a general rule of thumb that's bandied about in the learning and development world, and I would say is an absolute minimum, is that you practice and practice your material a minimum of 3 times the length of the session that you are going to be delivering. So if you've been tasked with delivering a 1-hour online session, then I would say that as an absolute minimum, you need to have delivered that material, to the dog, the cat, yourself on video, an audio recording, in the car, in the shower. You need to have said those words out loud in the way that you're going to say them at least 3 times before you then say them to your trainees. You don't want the first time that you're putting those sentences together or saying them out loud to be when you're actually in that session. So it's important that you practice to make sure that your expertise gets across. That ties in really nicely with the second area that comes out at the top of the list, and that is about confidence. So great trainers demonstrate real confidence. And when I say demonstrate real confidence, they might not feel confident, but they don't display any nervous habits. They're not constantly touching their faces or fidgeting around, that you can't visibly see them sort of shaking because they're holding a piece of paper in front of them reading what they're going to say. So it isn't about great trainers don't feel nerves, but it's about the fact that they have learnt to manage those and they do whatever it takes to make sure that they appear confident. If you're being trained by somebody who doesn't appear confident, that's absolutely going to knock your faith in what it is that they're saying to you. And they might be really, really knowledgeable. So as a trainer, it's your responsibility to do what it takes to get yourself to the point where you feel confident delivering that material. So if that means practicing 6 times, then that's what you've got to do. For those people that are newer to training, it can be really daunting. The prospect of standing up or going live online and speaking to people and delivering content can be really, really daunting. You know, public speaking is one of the top sort of 5 fears, isn't it, for a lot of people. So if it's not in your area of expertise, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. And when I'm working with people who training isn't, you know, necessarily their main career, it's just a part of the job that they are required to do as a manager, then we will talk about the value in really nailing what are those little niggles, what are those limiting beliefs, what are the things that are, you know, you're saying to yourself internally that might be tripping you up, that are impacting on how confidently you are able to feel and appear when you are delivering training. So some of those things include, you know, worrying about, well, they're going to think, you know, why is this person training me? What do they know that I don't? You know, so they don't know enough. Or they're worried about the way in which they're going to deliver it. So I'm going to come across as being a know-it-all and, you know, and maybe a little bit arrogant, and that worries me. Or it could be that people are worried about the way that they sound or the way that they look, because the attention is on them. So they might have some anxiety about the way that they come across in terms of the way they look and sound. So there will be lots of things that might be worrying you about delivering training. And a tip that I would share with you is to write those down in as much detail as you can, being as honest as you can, you know, really nail down, you know, what are your fears when it comes to delivering training. Write them in as much detail, capture them. That in itself, believe me, makes a difference. The very act of just getting those out, it's a bit like an exorcism, just getting those out and getting them on paper can instantly make you feel a little bit better anyway. So they're not rattling around in your head, they're actually written down. The next very important stage, because we don't want to, you know, give any credence to those limiting beliefs, what we want to do is to try and overcome them, is to really try and flip that statement around. So to look at that belief and to look at, well, what would the opposite of that be? And so if you think about, well, I'm worried that I'm going to come across as arrogant and a know-it-all, then the opposite of that for you, and it's about what's the opposite of that for you might be, you know, I come across as knowledgeable, having expertise, but also respectful of the contributions that the learners have got. So that might be, you know, another way of phrasing that in the positive. If you're worried that, you know, you're going to come across as not being knowledgeable enough, or that people are going to look at you and think, well, you know, who the hell is she to teach me? Then turning that round into a statement which is, you know, I have information, knowledge, experience that really is of value to the people that I'm training. So it's turning that around into a positive affirmation, and then looking at those positive affirmations as often as you can, you know, and it's that fake it till you make it. The more you tell yourself that positive stuff, you know, and minimise that negative stuff, you can set fire to it in a ritual in the garden if you want, and focus on those positive affirmations, the more you'll start to believe them and the more comfortable and confident you will become. So that tip is, you know, really pin down what are my worries, what are my concerns, get them down in as much detail, and then flip them as a present tense positive affirmation. You know, I am confident in delivering sessions. I am able to treat any mistakes lightly and move on with humour. So that might be another positive affirmation. So work out what it is for you, write it down, and then flip it. Great trainers are organised. So this is about being set up way before even the earliest of early bird delegates turns up, so that you have everything ready, your technology's been tested, you are ready to welcome, whether that's face-to-face or virtually through an online session, you are there ready to welcome and pay attention to your delegates. Now, there's nothing worse than as a learner walking into a room, you might be feeling a little bit nervous and the trainer is completely preoccupied with some technological problem that they're having getting the presenter to show their slides. So being there, organised, super early makes a massive difference to the learners, and this is all about your trainees. It's all about the people that you're training. It's not about you, it's about what you've got to do to make them feel comfortable. So remember, these points are from the eyes of your learners, the recipients of the development that you're sharing with them. So if you're delivering sessions online, and that's live, so maybe a Zoom or a Teams session, then the same applies. So you need to make sure that you're sat there ready as the host, at least say 15 minutes before. And you can even invite people on 15 minutes before and say, training starts at 10, 9:45 for a catch-up, introductions, whatever that sounds like. So the same principles absolutely apply. So being organised is going to have a massive impact on your learners positively, because it's going to enable you to focus on them. You're not going to be having to worry about setting things up and rushing around. You are there to focus on welcoming them to your session. So that's point number 3. Knowing your audience is another thing that's really important. So this is another key area that comes out, and trainees really appreciate it when you share relevant anecdotes, when you link a scenario that you're talking about to a task that they do in their role. So this is similar to when you do this. So delegates really, really appreciate that. And knowing your audience is going to require a bit of effort. So something you might want to consider is, depending on learner numbers or trainee numbers, could you put a quick call in to each of your delegates before the session, just to have a little chat, talk to them about the role that they do, talk to them about what they're hoping to get out of the session. I think that does, so many things. I think it builds rapport, and I think it makes you feel more confident about the session when you actually get on it, because these are not strangers, these are people that you've had a conversation with. So going back to one of the previous sessions that I did, we talked about how you build trust and rapport, and that goes for being a trainer as well. So if you can find some commonality with the people that you're training, that's absolutely going to improve, that level of openness. So spending some time finding out more about them before the session will absolutely pay dividends. It only has to be a 5-10 minute chat, but it will absolutely pay dividends. And if you can't do that, if time's short, then even if you're doing an online session, if the session starts at 10, just saying, listen, I'll be available from 22:45. Be really nice to have a quick chat with those of you that are around, just getting to know you a little bit better, and to do some sort of warm-up stuff before the session starts at 10. So that's another way that you can do it if you're a little bit time poor. But it's really something you need to think about, is how do I get to know my audience so that I can make the content that I'm going to share with them super relevant. And that's another key area that comes out from the sessions that I do. So great trainers explain the relevance of what they're training to the individuals that they're training. Now, what we know is that children, so I've got 2 kids, one 9 and one 13, and when children are younger, they will learn for learning's sake, and they're quite happy to do that. They won't question, why am I learning this? As they hit 13, that starts to change, and what they start to do is to question the value of what they're learning. So why do I need to know this? Why am I learning this? What value is this going to be for me in the future? What value is this going to add to me now? So when we are delivering training to adults, as most of us are, we've got to build in strong explanations for the relevance of this. We've got to explain why this is going to be important, relevant, useful, valuable to them now and in the future. So in order to do that, you need to understand the job that they do. So that goes back to my previous point. The more you understand the job that they do, the more opportunities you have to hook that relevance in. As training specialists, we'll talk about learning objectives, and by the end of this session, but actually learners and trainees aren't really worried about the objectives. What they're bothered about is the tasks that they do. So if you can articulate that in the sense of, you do this task and this content's going to help you do that task more quickly, more easily, with less hassle, with less frustration, whatever that is, then that's when you're really going to hook your learners. So another key thing when you are training adults or young adults is you've got to work hard to think about, how do I not just make this relevant, but how do I very quickly and early on in the session explain the relevance of this content to the work and the job that this person does. So the last three areas all really link in together and are very much about focusing on the trainees. So one area of that is that great trainers are fantastic listeners. Now, in order to be a great listener, you've got to be paying attention. And in order to be paying attention, your mind doesn't need to be focused or shouldn't be focused on your content. So when I first started training and when I'm observing, relatively new trainers, you can see that a lot of their brain space is taken up worrying about the content. What is it that I'm saying next? What is the next chunk of content that I'm getting to? So while you're focusing on the content, you can't be focusing on your trainees, and you're not going to be listening as actively to the contributions that they're making, which might be fantastic insights, and any questions that they might have. So this is really all about making sure that you are trainee focused. 90% of your attention needs to be focused on your trainees or your learners or your delegates, and only 10% on your content. So you've got to do whatever it takes, going back to, being prepared and organised and practiced and expert. You've got to do whatever it takes to make sure that during that session, 90% of your focus and your attention is on your trainees and only 10% is on your content, because that's going to enable you to focus on your learners. It's going to enable you to be a really great listener, and it's going to enable you to provide a route map for where the session's going without clinging to, pieces of paper and slides and what's coming up in the next 5 minutes. You can give a broad overview of, we're first of all going to start here, then we're going to go there, and we're going to round up by going there. And you can then seamlessly facilitate people through those stages. So it's important that you do whatever it takes to get yourself to the point where you are trainee focused. Another thing I'd say in this area, so it's not one of the 8 key areas, but something that I would share with you as an insight that I have when I'm observing trainers and giving them feedback, and this counts for trainers that might be relatively new, but also some very experienced trainers that I've observed. One of the most consistent things that I need to give feedback on to help that person's development is the amount of brain work that the trainer is doing versus the amount of brain work that their trainees are doing. And what I notice time and time again is the trainer working incredibly hard. Their synapses are firing all over the place, and they're absolutely exhausted by the end of the session, and they haven't positioned or structured the session to make sure that the learners are working harder than they are. You know this stuff. You've seen stuff, done stuff, experienced stuff, know stuff that you are now sharing with them. The learning isn't yours. The main learning should be coming from them. As a salesperson, you live for those moments, the buzz of getting a sale. As somebody who's developing people and training, you know, the buzz we get is when the penny drops, or when somebody makes a new connection that they haven't made before, or when somebody has one of those, oh, I get it moments. You know, that really is, you know, the fuel that keeps us going. So it's your job to structure your sessions to make sure that your delegates and your trainees are working hard. So that means, you know, setting up exercises, making sure that you've got opportunities for application, discussion, reflection. It's not just you sharing information with them. A really great way of doing this is sometimes doing what we call the flipped classroom, where rather than using the time that you have with them to go through content and material, you send them that in advance. So that might be even that you reference them to somebody else, a video where they can watch somebody else explain that theory or that concept. And the value that you add is in the discussion around, okay, so what do we think about that, and how are you going to make that work for you? What does that look like for you in the job that you do? So it's really thinking about your content, and have you structured and designed your content in a way that is going to make your trainees engage and therefore learn. You know, what you don't want is you've worked incredibly hard, you've been really, really animated, you know, exhausted at the end of that 1 hour session, and your trainees have sort of sat there thinking, when is this going to end? You know, this is painful. So it's all about making sure that as you go through your agenda, where am I getting them working? You know, how am I setting this exercise up so that they're going to come to some realizations, they're going to start making some connections. They've got an opportunity to share their experiences with the rest of the group, because that's really going to add to the richness of the content. So to summarise, I think as we go through each of those 8 points, fundamentally being a great trainer is all about focusing on your trainees, and everything that you need to do around being organised, practicing, you know, making sure that you spend time getting to know your audience, explaining the relevance of the content to them. All of the stuff that we've talked about is really about positioning you so that you are able to, when you are with those trainees, dedicate 90% of your attention to them. So it's doing whatever it takes to get yourself in a position where you are able to do that. So great trainers live and breathe that 90-10 rule, and you observe them and you see them living and breathing that 90-10 rule. I hope you found that useful. I'd love to hear how the things that we've shared tie into the things that you believe make a really great trainer. You've got some things to add to that list. I'm sure you have, because often the list is a lot longer than that, but I thought I'd share with you the 8 things that consistently come out at the top of the list. If you've got any questions or any feedback, again, please do get in touch. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.